Hi, my name's Rob Ryder, speaking out of West Cornwall, and I'm joined again tonight with Patrick Quanton in Andalusia. Hi again, Patrick.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah. So I thought tonight, as this is we're actually going somewhere with these talks. I thought that the first three conversations were based on your book with Eric Bowalder, which is Why Me? And I thought we'd kind of round that one up because we've kind of reached the stage of where we're going tonight. We've gone through conception, and we're going to start tonight from the 12-week stage when the human form takes. So I thought it'd be nice to round up with answering that question as best you can, why me? What does that say for us as an individual, how we were made? I've heard you before in the seminar talk about the Chinese doctors getting birth charts out. People hear the word destiny, fate, my life path. So it seems that we have a life path regardless of what we think up here in our conscious mind. And that because we know evolution is going somewhere, so if we can round that up, what that means to us as individuals.
Right. Yeah, first of all, of course, we say evolution is going somewhere. Not everybody seems to agree on that. However, if we think about it, long before humans came to this earth, evolution is following a very specific path. And like it is with everything, if you don't understand and if you don't see it, if you don't see the path, then it's chaos. Then it's just random things happening. However, there is a path. And the path is in the energies and how the energies are put together and how they manifest. So how I would like to use the word unfold, because you get steps in there. We have identified the energies of the universe, of which the whole of the universe is made up of. So that includes the energy field of the universe. And of course, because it can't be anything else, the main energies that create the matter, the material things. And there is an unfolding in that. There is a graduation in that. Once you understand that everything is made up from the same basic elements, and that it's just a matter of how these are put together, or really how the energies are showing themselves step by step by step. And that way, once you see that, you can then see where it's going. You can see where it's coming from, and you can see where it's going. We have been able to not only identify the seven basic energies of the universe, but we also have been able to calculate times-wise. So we've been able to confirm that with the evolution of the universe, the creation of, everything in it, including how, when life begins, how life unfolds, and what it is manifesting as we've said, first bacteria, and then you go to plant life and egg-laying animals, mammals, and humans. All of that we can relate to changes in the energy field, because it is unfolding in a very particular way. And that means, of course, that it is going somewhere. And the human element in that is part of that creation, and plays a part in wherever that is going. And we can, in energetic terms, we can identify where that it's going. We also know from that human life still has a very long way to go. And that also means that humans have a very long way to go in developing themselves, in developing their knowledge, and so on. So that means that there is a path to the whole of creation and to evolution. It isn't random. Yeah. It goes step by step. It happened long before mankind was there, and it continues while we are here. Now, some people believe that they've got a free will and therefore they can decide whatever it is they want to decide. However, mankind is following a path, an energetic path, or it's laid out by the energies. And so our free will is limited to the here and now and to the conscious level. But the human consciousness is only a very small part of life. It is the outside bit, the very thin layer on the top. And life itself is unconscious. It just moves on. So we can see that everywhere. You know, your body wouldn't know what to do with every breath that it took, or with every bit of food that it ate, or what you drink, or how your heart is beating, or what your liver is doing, if you had to make a conscious decision about it. In other words, I'm free to decide what to do with those things. No, life continues on an unconscious level, and it continues how it always has continued. So human beings, as with everything else in this living universe, that part of the whole of the universe that we call the living universe, because we're talking about the evolution of life itself. Everything in there is coming from whatever went before. We learn through our experiences. And what we experience as an individual, as a group, we will note down and pass on to the next generation. So that is how evolution goes. It comes from somewhere, and whatever is new, whatever is the new organism that comes into being, is related to whatever went before. That is why also we see, when we look at the human field, which is a small part of the life universe, which is a small part of the whole of the universe, if we just look at the human field, then we can see that there is evolution, and that evolution is not random. There are different types of people, different groups of people, different races of people. And those people, those different races, they are all adjusted to the land that they live on, the land that they come from. So they're adjusted to different climates, they're adjusted to different living conditions, physically and mentally. They're made for that particular part of the world, that particular part in time, that particular part of life. We come from somewhere. We take up the basic information that is needed. In other words, what people from that area in the past have already learned, that is our starting point for the new life. That information creates that particular life, which also means that you are who you are because of the time that you come into this life, the place that you come into this life. Yeah, that is very important to know. It also means that you are made for the situation, the circumstances that you enter. So you are made for that particular life that you're going to lead. You have the right characteristics to lead that life. And your experiences, you will gather, and you will pass that on to the next generation. And there are two main ways of passing that on. One is just by teaching them things, showing them things so that they can experience it as well. And the other thing is that you pass it on as a group, things that you've learned. The circumstances have changed, as we know, climate changes, over hundreds and thousands of years. And so the way people live in those climates have changed too. That is noted down into your DNA or into the DNA of that particular race, that particular region where people live, and they pass that on so that the next generation already has that information to start their life with. That's important, because when we then go back to how that life begins and how we pass on that information, then we have to look at how we're passing that on and at what stage is what particular information the most important. So if we go back to the pregnancy, I would like to make a couple of comments first before we move on to how this information has been transmitted to the growing child, to the baby, to the fetus, the growing child. One is, the medical profession tells us that after the time between the ovulation, which is when a pregnancy can start, and the menstruation of the woman, it is fixed to 14 to 16 days, nothing more than that. Yeah, 14, 15, okay, maybe 16 days, that's it. What does that mean? Well, if we look at the menstruation cycle of women, we see that there is great differences. There are women that have a very short cycle, even less than 3 weeks. And there are women that have a very long cycle, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, or very irregular cycle. What is important to understand now, the medical profession says a pregnancy lasts 40 weeks, right? And they start calculating that from the first day of your last period. But if you have a very short period, that means that there isn't 2 weeks before the ovulation, there is far less than that. And if you have a very long period, a very long cycle, then there is a lot more time. Yet they calculated at 40 weeks, and nowadays they insist that women don't go over the 40 weeks because it's bad for the baby. However, in reality, they don't even know how long the pregnancy has lasted when it started, because the pregnancy starts at the ovulation stage. Yeah, the female egg cell only remains fertile for 24, at the most 48 hours. So it's got to happen 14 days before the menstruation. But their calculation can be way off, can be a very long time off, weeks. Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out, because it is important to know how long, well, to know if you want to study it, it's important to know how long the pregnancy actually lasts. Now, we've been making some calculations about human life, and the various stages within human life, because they're important. The various stages in life are various energies that are on top, that are the priority. So energies are information. So different energies give different information to that person. And not only information, but it sort of drives your life in that particular direction. So I said that we had 7 main energies in the universe, and so also in human life. Each of those 7 has a different information that it holds, and it is the driving force behind the manifestation. So how the human form and the human being is being formed on a physical level and a mental level. Right? So in order, in other words, how these energies always manifest in the universe. The first energy carries information about the form that it will take. Yeah, it gives a form to the energy field and also to the matter. This is followed by a balancing energy. It tries to balance things out. So we have a form that is formed and is growing, pushing the outside energies away, putting pressure on it, and the outside putting pressure on the new form. Then there is a stage in which there is a balance between the two. The third stage is about an awareness from inside. Yeah, the new form, in this case a new human being, becomes aware of itself and its surroundings. So you could say in a way this is one form, or the beginning formation of consciousness. After that, you get information about mobility, moving around, so that you can actually respond in a much broader sense to the energies from the outside world. This is followed by communication. So you're going to develop skills in which to communicate better, more efficiently with the outside world. From all this, the next stage, development stage, is the gathering of knowledge. So all of your experiences, exchanges with the outside world, you now pull together in a map of learning. Yeah, you now understand better, and that's not just human understanding. Every organism, you know, after it's developed to this stage, will understand, yeah, how the outside world, nature around it, is operating, and therefore it can quite easily respond to that. And the very last stage is that nothing else matters anymore but your person, your own survival, or your own death. So those are the 7 information stages that everything in the universe is going through, from its conception to its death, to its demise. Everything, human life inclusive. Now, we've been able to calculate, make some calculations on how long these energies need to develop, because, as I said, everything step by step unfolds in front of us, and the unfolding and the various timings that are that these energy fields and these information fields occupy is a matter of the golden ratio, and through that, you know, all the details, the scientific details, you can find in the book. But just to say that we've been able to calculate how a human life, the human lifespan, how that compares with the unfolding of these 7 energy levels. And that is to start from conception. So not from the first day of your last period, but actually from conception. From, as we said last week, this lightning strike, this impulse that actually moves the whole thing into the first cell. And strangely enough, maybe not, we've been able to see that each time human life moves into a different stage of life, that it corresponds with a change of energy. So we start off, the first energy, first information level gives form to the creation. What happens? We said last time, the first 10 to 12 weeks, we form the human form. We get a human body. We can recognize it as a human form. That is under impulse of this first information layer. The information layer of formation of the human being doesn't stop after 10 or 12 weeks. It continues to form different levels, because every single information level, energy levels, is divided into the same, or is made up from the same 7 energies, only in different combinations. So throughout the pregnancy, this first level, this formation of the human being continues. It continues throughout the entire pregnancy and beyond. Then one of the questions was, how does the baby know, how does the mother know that the baby needs to be born or is going to be born? It's in the energies, in the unfoldment of the energies, because there is an energy level that's right at the end of its unfoldment splits up. It creates a two-way system. And it's interesting to notice that birth happens when you reach that point. So the energy split up, and that is when the baby is born. So again, it's driven by the energies, but it's still within the information field of formation. So after the baby is born, it still continues to be formed. And it's the last levels that are not formed yet. And those levels are mobility, communication, knowledge. That still needs to be formed after birth. Right. Let's go back to the pregnancy first. So, first 12 weeks, 10, 12 weeks, it's an unfoldment, and the format is made. The information, the physical information of that energy is laid down in the DNA. So the DNA is just building, or is giving instructions to build the human form. In that time, it is completely protected from the outside world. It's not listening to the outside world. Why? Because it isn't a human being yet. It is a human being in creation, right? So the cells themselves are human cells, but the form is not completed yet. Completed, protected from the outside world, which also means from the activities of the mother. After that, the human form is ready. The feeding ground which is basically the female egg that holds most of the building blocks, is depleted. The human form now inside the mother is now starting to feed from its environment again. We always do. Every cell, every living organism is continuously being fed information by its environment. In this case now, the environment of the fetus is the mother. So it gets its information through the information field, the energy field of the mother. So whatever the mother is now feeling, believing, how she's living her life, whether she's happy, whether she's depressed, whether she's whatever, is information that the fetus receives. And it's with this information that the baby or the fetus is building itself. You know? It's completing its formation. This means, for instance, if a mother is an alcoholic, it's not the alcohol that causes potential damage to the formation of that baby. It is why the mother drinks that causes the damage. It's information, it's energy exchange. Yeah, the baby doesn't, if you put it very simply, as far as alcohol is concerned, when the mother is drunk, the baby isn't drunk. The baby is not receiving high levels, or it's not having high levels of alcohol in its bloodstream. But it is hearing, it is noticing the state that the mother is in, mentally, emotionally, the conditions the mother is in. What is she afraid of? Seriously afraid of? Is she afraid of her husband? Then the fetus, the baby, the growing baby will receive that information. So for the next weeks, right up to birth, the baby is growing and it's forming itself in a way that it perceives the outside world through the eyes, the being of the mother. It's important to realize that. It's not about not drinking or never smoke or only have biological food or whatever it is. No, it's a state of mind of the mother that is the most important in this formation of the baby. Once the baby is born, it is then coming in contact with the surroundings of the mother, with the life the mother is leading in a direct way. So now it's getting direct impulses, not just from the mother, but from everything else that it comes in contact with. And that includes your pets, everything. Every human that is there, the living conditions, everything now becomes a direct interchange between the real life experience of the baby. And the formation of that baby and how it forms itself lays the basis of who that person is and what it requires in order to survive in that particular circumstances. That continues until about 3.5 years of age. These are calculations that we've made on an average. the lifespan of human life can vary quite a bit because energies can unfold quicker or slower. So each stage can be different from just your mathematical calculations. But it is up to the age of around 3.5 years of age that the baby is still forming the foundations of its life, the foundations of who it's going to be. So therefore, what happens to that baby in those first 3 years is extremely important. And I'm mentioning this because it's a totally different experience for the baby if, for instance, every morning when it wakes up, mother is there. Mother is there to feed it, to keep it warm, to keep it safe. Or it's got to be woken up early, rushed off to the crash because mum's got to go to work, pick her up in the afternoon, give her something to eat out of a pot because it's much quicker and easy and I don't have any more time. Or children or babies that spend their days with the grandparents. Grandparents are not parents. It's a different dynamic. There's a different energy. And don't forget, the baby, this new human life, is still in formation, basic formation. These are the pillars on which that life will continue to grow, right? You could say you are now forming the seed, basic growth seed of that life. That is important to know, that these first few years are very important. And it's not about whether you've got a good life, or whether you live in a castle, in a palace, or in a slum somewhere. It's not about that. Yeah, it's about whether you as a baby feel safe, supported, rested, calm, relaxed. That is what is important. So as long as mother is there, the baby is relaxed. If mother is not panicking, the baby is not panicking. That sort of thing. That is important. So that's the first and very important bit to realize before we can then move on to the unfoldment of the other information levels. Yeah.
So now, I just want to say, if anyone's watching, we've kind of transferred now from the Why Me book to the Your Health in Your Hands book, which people would have seen on previous videos. And there's a lot to break down on that. And really, the reason is that it is the foundation from where we're going to be conversing of from now on, really, that foundation. So I've got a few observations, quite a few really, but some might be a short answer, some might be a little bit more detailed. So I'm just kind of randomly go through these. So the first one is, in times past, we're led to believe that the order of the day was really strict parents, speak when you're spoken to, really disciplined. You could see that as children being suppressed in some way. And now in the modern era, we've gone to the far other extreme in that some parents are telling the children, you can be whoever you want to be. You can choose who you want to be. And as always, most times, the balance is in the middle, because what you're saying is you created a certain way. You haven't really got a choice who you're going to be. And life is possibly more about finding out who you are. And yeah, you've got this creativity that you can put into it, but it's more about finding out who you are, not deciding who you are. Is that a more balance for you?
Yeah. So it's about who you are in the environment that you're in. So you have a foundation that is laid out as to who you are. Those are your strengths and your weaknesses. You know, some people are small, others are tall, and so on. There are various differences. So you always need to find a way to survive. But the survival of that one person, so it's you who needs to survive. So you need to know who you are and what your relationship is to the outside world. And it is, as far as being, you know, as a small child, being able to express yourself completely, and the other side of being told what to do, when to do it, and so on. When we're talking about formation of a human being, then it is about laying down rules. When a child knows, it grows up and it knows what is required, what its environment requires it to do, then that will give it guidance. It will give it a solid base to work from. I mean, obviously, we can talk about that later, but there is a difference between telling a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old to do what it needs to do and a 16-year-old or a 35-year-old. So it's about the foundation of life. And if what you are telling the baby is that mum and dad are hardly there, you know, and you're in different environments and different people and different energies all the time, then that baby will not have the strict guidance that the parents want to pass on to the children. And yes, it's about a balance, but it's also about giving directions to the formation of a new human being.
Yeah, and there's something I believe in psychological terms is called attachment theory, and that babies really coming into this world are quite lost, and they need that figure there of the mother really and the father there, and if they haven't got that person to attach to view the world through, they're going to go searching for it. And I don't want to stay on this tonight, but I think we'll come back maybe in a further conversation about childhood trauma. And I've listened to people who've been abused, and there's a lady, we'll come back to this later, I won't get stuck on this now, but who's spoken about even a perpetrator. There was an element of her being a child that attached to that person, even with the abuse aside, because ultimately it's a quest for love, it's a quest to be loved, to feel love, and to be guided through life and the world. So as I think we both said before, the most important job of the mother first is just to be there. And if you haven't got the best nutrition in the world, the child isn't interested in the slightest. What that child wants is to feel safe, be able to express itself. And it just needs that, what people now call attachment. It needs to attach because it can't survive in the world by itself. And I think we'll come back to that, especially with child abuse.
Yeah, just one little thing is when a child is looking for love, it is the adult environment around the child that determines what that love is by their behavior, right? So that is important. But the child is looking for attachment, is looking for safety, as you said.
Yeah, yeah. So like I say, that's probably something we'll come back to. So during the first 12 weeks of pregnancy, obviously we get what people call morning sickness. Now, there are some people that have a very extreme version of that. I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind that. but I'm presuming you'll just give a little bit of detail on this. This is to do with the changing of the internal system of the mother to prepare for a child and the development, and there's waste that comes with that. That's possibly something to do with it.
Yeah.
And some women obviously have extreme versions of this. So
Yeah.
I just wonder if you could just very quickly talk to that.
The reason for sickness in general is that we are trying to eliminate an awful lot of toxins, waste products. Now, at the beginning of the pregnancy, a great deal of physical changes need to happen, mental changes and physical changes within the mother, within that body and the mind of the mother. Those changes mean that structures are being rebuilt, if you like, or altered. And that creates a lot of waste products. Those waste products need to be eliminated. And so very often, it would be much better for in the early stages of pregnancies for women not to eat too much, not to eat too frequently, just to do a bit of a fasting period, short periods, so that inside there is a lot of room for the elimination of the waste products. Some have got to the extreme. That usually is an indication of a mental state which is opposing the pregnancy. And mind you, it doesn't have to be a conscious state, as in the mother and the father may be very happy about the pregnancy, but unconsciously within the mother there is a opposition, there is a fight against, and fighting against means more waste products, so more need for elimination. So it's related to that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And what we know, what you oppose in the body becomes more painful. I've lost my thought there. 1 second. Yeah. So also we have. Let me just check my notes. I'm sorry about that. I've just lost my thought. Yeah. Yeah. So that was it. Yeah. Going back to the decades ago, the thalidomide thing was, you'll know more about this as being a former medical doctor, but aren't we told that was to help with the sickness stage? What was the history behind the thalidomide in the pregnancy?
You mean the effects that we saw on the pregnancy? Basically, it's a toxic effect that you see. So you're poisoning the child. But don't forget, what was it used for? Why were these women taking that? For depression.
Mm-hmm. So another very quick thing was, this is only a short one, something you mentioned regarding the ovulation, and you mentioned possibly a couple of days when the egg can get fertilized. So I don't know if you've come across this name, but it's basically saying the same thing. It's called the Billings method, which is a natural method of contraception, which is basically saying if a woman can get to understand her discharge, she will be able to see physically that there's only a 2 to 3 day period in her cycle that she can possibly get pregnant, because the womb is inhostile for sperm, and through her discharge she'll know that 3 days. Now the modern word is called the Billings method, but obviously this is based on natural sciences and observation.
Yes, and I mean that is exactly what the kind of knowledge that people used to have. So the female egg is only fertile for, at the most, 48 hours. The sperm is only fertile for 4 to 6 days. So if you could actually establish, and you can, by observation, by the learning process, when ovulation takes place, and if you're then in a regular cycle, then it's easy to calculate which are your fertile days or week, if you like, and the rest you're basically infertile. And I mean, we now sort of act a bit, and we respond a bit in a way as if this is all magic stuff, and it's so weird. But I don't have to tell dogs when a female dog is in heat. They can smell it, and they smell it from miles away, if you like. So, you know, it's built into nature. All animals know when the fertile period is. They know, because there are signs. There are energetic signs you can pick up, but energetic signs also have a physical aspect, a material aspect to it.
Yeah, I've heard tribal people, and we call this the Billings method now in modern days, but tribal people, it's based on tribal knowledge, basically. So another quick one that we tend to see most spontaneous abortions around just before the human form or that stage. So I'm presuming in the energy field, something, for want of a better word, has gone wrong or cannot continue and create a human life. So is that the reason behind the stage of spontaneous abortions?
Yeah, that's correct. And the majority happen within the first 3 months of pregnancy, as doctors will tell us, and there's nothing you can do about it. And luckily, there's nothing you can do about it, because it means that the circumstances of this pregnancy are not conducive to finishing the job. You can see it this way, that either there is something wrong with the seed, or there is something wrong with that initial feeding ground, i.e. the building blocks that are in the female egg. So it's fundamental. It's fundamental to the basic structure of what the form of that particular human being is going to be. And we should accept the fact that not every conception will lead to a full-grown form of human being, because nowhere in nature that is the case. There's always a lot of waste, if you like. Why? Because it's got to be right to be able to survive, or have a chance to survive, the circumstances. So that the balance, it's inside, a balance between what comes in and creates the spark and the conception, and how then that can direct the building work that needs to be done. If it's not correct, then it should be abandoned.
So the humans that are born maybe heavily deformed, or there's what we say wrong, you know, whatever that means, would that then be from something toxic in the energy field in the development stage? Or is it just a case that it's been able to be constructed to survive, even though not particularly strong? Or is there still an influence in that development stage which has become toxic?
The two different abnormalities of deformities. One is, if the doctors would call it genetic, but it's basically when the formation of that basic structure is slightly off, but it's still okay. Yeah, you can still live it. But the second one is a major toxic influence once the basic human form has been formed, and then it will grow into being that particular person. So after the 3 months, the first 3 months of pregnancy, you can have a toxic effect, which then, depending on which energy, which information it is that is out of sync, will lead to tissues and organs being out of sync and being deformed. So there is a distinction between those two. Most of the deformities that happen within the first 3 months are non-viable. So the fetus will die, or you would have a spontaneous abortion.
Yeah, and I think that's explaining why you mentioned before the first 12 weeks, there's nothing contact with the outside world. After 12 weeks, the outside world, as it were, is the mother. And that includes the environment the mother's in, the emotional environment, we know highly toxic chemicals in the environment are all part of that as well. And so, yeah, they can lead to certain malfunctions, shall we say, after that. So again, it comes down to the environment, the energetic environment and physical toxicity, should we say, that could be in the environment. And another one, seems to be a common problem, or reasonably common, that women, now you may correct me on this, but I've just heard women say this, or they're being encouraged to feel this way, that at the end of a pregnancy, they're all being told that they're becoming anemic and they need to go on iron tablets or even have a blood transfusion. So there seems to be truth in that, or is that a stress thing? What is this? Seems to be a little bit more common, or potentially common with the same person. So whereas you've mentioned before,
yeah,
there's women who seem to have a strong sickness on the first 12 weeks, and that seems to be regular. The women who seem to become anemic, and that seems to be a pattern as well.
It is more common because of medical tests. So, and there are two levels to this. One is they do a lot more testing, and so therefore they're gonna find more abnormalities. And secondly, they change the level at which they make this kind of diagnosis or statement. Yeah, it is normal for the number of red blood cells in the mother to be lower after giving birth than during the pregnancy. It is nothing to do with becoming anemic. It is once again to do with readjusting to the new environment that the mother is in. The baby is born. Yeah, we don't need what's the main function of the red blood cells is to carry oxygen to the tissues. Now, if you've got more tissues that you need to get oxygen to, you need more lorries to transport it on. So more red blood cells. Once that is over, the system goes, okay, get rid of these lorries, get rid of a lot of red blood cells. So the number drops. You call it anemic, fine, but treating it is something else. And then there is a question, we treat it with iron tablets, but scientific research a long time ago has shown that these iron tablets or the iron supplement is not going to the hemoglobin inside the red blood cells where the medical profession is saying that it's going. It's not going there. It is just being pushed out into other tissues like the liver tissue and the kidney tissue. And it accumulates there until you stop taking those tablets, and then the system can clear this rubbish out for you. So the diagnosis is rubbish and the treatment is rubbish. You know, it's a normal given thing that the mother readjusts after birth to her new condition. That's it.
Yeah, they just say similar things regarding blood pressure.
Yeah.
Say, for example, I was to have an argument with my wife. I was late for an appointment. I run for the bus. I'm under a lot of stress and panic. And I walk in the doctor's and he takes me blood pressure. He said, "Wow, your blood pressure is high. That's abnormal. But considering in the morning I've had, that would be quite normal."
Yeah, absolutely.
So they normalize everything, but they take the life of the person out of it. And what you're explaining to me there regarding anemia, you know, this woman's now sharing her body with another being.
Yeah.
So you have to look at the circumstances in which these levels appear, which makes complete sense to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what we've gathered it and we're pushing on it is really laying the foundation for everything after this. And it makes eventually in our conversations, because you spoke a lot about freedom and health before, it will get a little bit political because you can't avoid it nowadays. But it's quite interesting to know that governments around the world want to get, they even have nurseries for babies now. Now, if a baby is born and it needs to attach, needs to find some kind of security in the world and know the world. And if mothers now, the sign of a good mother is to get back as work as quickly as you can. Look at me, look, I'm a working mother, which doesn't seem to make sense at all to me, working mother.
Yeah.
And yet the governments are encouraging children, even baby nurseries. It seems to me that that's the age where they can put their information in this child. Whereas actually, again, we're just repeating what we've said, that the first thing a mother needs to be, especially in the first 3 or 4 years, is just to be there and be a safe haven for the baby. That's really it, really.
Yeah. And give the baby guidance, you know, show the baby how things are where you are at that time. So in other words, this is the life that you've entered, and I'm showing you. We learn through experience. So mother, father, the family, the surroundings, they're showing you how life is and how best to handle it. Whether that is still the best way to handle life 40 years on is a different matter, but it gives you a base from which it's a sort of a basic library that you can rely on. You can look things up. You know, dad does it this way, mum does it that way, and so on. So you have guidance in that. When that guidance is taken over by a group of people or by a concept that is not directed towards your life, your specific circumstances, then you get a lot of conflicting experiences. And that confuses you when you are growing up and trying to use your early experiences and your early gain knowledge. Try to use that in the circumstances that you, as a young adult, teenager, young adult, are moving into. So you can evaluate what you've learned and how you're doing things. But if you haven't learned the correct things for your life, your surroundings, your family, your village, then it becomes hopeless and you become lost very early on in life.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we'll have for time, but this could be quite an interesting question, really. It's, well, first of all, how do you define autism anyway? So you did an article recently regarding behavioral disorders. So actually, I'll put a link below the description on this, which was quite interesting. And now we're learning about the influences on the development of 12 weeks, which is really the emotional state of the mother, which will obviously be influenced by the father and whatever surrounds there. So we're not blaming mothers for it's a whole thing, but initially they are feeding off the mother. That's the direct experience. And you see in a lot of what is being claimed autistic children, they basically can't cope with their environment. Now, if you've been brought up and felt in the womb that this is a fearful environment, that it's not a balanced environment, that I'm going to really have to be on my guard to survive in this environment, then we know the response to that is fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of what we say, I mean, I haven't defined the term autism yet, but these behavioral things seem to be not regarding the issues with the child, but the issue with the child, how he perceives the world he's in.
Yeah.
And so quickly, just like a little bit of a recap on that article you wrote.
Well, let's make it simple. Let's not go for etiquettes and labels and naming things, but let's just see what happens. Yeah. And there are two important factors, I think. One is, what is the child doing? It is withdrawing or trying to withdraw from its environment, from its immediate surroundings. It is not communicating properly with its surroundings. So that is important. Then the question arises, why would it do that? Well, if it doesn't feel safe, if it doesn't feel that it's guided in a proper way, in a way that itself, can gain from that guidance, then it's best not to listen to it. And it makes a decision, and this is the second point, it makes the decision to go it alone. It's much better if I can rely on my own experiences, and I'm not looking at you anymore, and I'm not listening to you anymore, because I have no idea what this life is about. You don't tell me. I'm completely confused, and now I've decided I'm going it alone.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned in an earlier chat there's other influences on the development, like these hands that could have behavioral consequences later on. I won't use the name, but we could have medical interventions that are quite toxic, that have been known to affect children. But I think we like to focus on really the energetic environment. And I remember Bruce Lipton mentioning that all the children in the Romanian orphanages, even though they were well physically nourished, became what we call autistic, because there were these very, very young children who had no physical love to attach to. They were completely lost. And pretty much all of them became autistic. Now, they were having, they had a lot of donations, they were having warm blankets, physical food, but there was nobody there for them. And like you said, it makes sense now. They had to go it on their own, without knowledge, without guidance. And pretty much all of them became what we put forward as autistic. And it's once it's gone to a certain level in the formation stage, it doesn't seem to be something that you can unpick after that formation stage.
Yeah, after the formation stage, then it becomes more difficult, because you've laid out the basic stuff, and then from 3.5 years onwards, you move to the next information layer. As a child, as a young child, you are trying to balance, who you've become, or the formation of who you are, and your outside environment. So you're trying to find your own balance in that circus. And that moves up to the age of about 8.5, 9. From then on, a new information field occurs. We call it the teenage years. And that is about awareness, becoming more conscious about yourself, who you are, what you would like to do, and conscious of the outside world. If you look at, where we are today in the world, then I've noticed that most of the celebrated climate activists are teenagers. They've become aware of their environment, and they're able, or they're allowed, to express it. So, and that goes up to about 17, 18 years of age. From then on, we get the mobility information age. Mobility information for the young adult. So they move out of the home, into a new family, into another job. So it's all about movement in their lives. That goes up to the early 30s, 32, 33 years of age. Then you're an adult. Then you're a more stable adult. And it's the communication information field that rules. So these adults are communicating towards their offspring. They're communicating with other adults. And this is basically the level at which we used to run the world, right? Because it goes up to the age of 70, 71 years of age, adult life. Then it changes again, going into the knowledge field. So it's knowledge at the elderly stage of life, later on in life. And that goes on for about 20 years to 1991 years of age. This is normal development. And the latter stages, only for about 2 years, is only about me. It's about what I need, nothing else, right? The rest of the world doesn't matter, not even, the neighbors, of what I need. And it should be like that, because I need to prepare for my death. I need to fold up my experiences. I need to put everything in order in my head, in my field, so that I can slip into the energy field and leave the material bits behind. And I think that completes life.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening to this kind of information new, they might be quite interested to know that we're talking about the development of a human being. We're not even mentioning, as regards the mother, her diet, is she eating organic, fresh food? Now, I'm not putting down local, fresh, organic food, probably in the ideal world, as we'll come on to later in the conversations. That's what we would eat, because you're going to say something different, that it's about the information in the food. But we've just focused on now tonight the emotional state of the mother, how the mother feels about the world, how that information, that energy is passed on to the child. and how that is forming the child. Very little to do with the mother getting her vitamins and minerals and making sure she's up on her supplements. And we haven't even mentioned that.
No, and I think to round this off, it's important that we stay focused. Yeah, you can have endless discussions about lots of things, but let's stay focused on how nature truly is formed and how it operates. And that is what we're trying to do. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that actually later on, when we talk about feeding the system, the digestive tract, you've got very interesting observations, medical as well, observations regarding how we digest food. And that I think will become more relevant as we go on. So I think we probably leave it there tonight. So we've got through the first formative years of the formation, and that's gives us a foundation. I'm pretty sure we'll come back to this foundation because there's lots of things you can pick out of that as we move forward. I'm not 100% sure where we go tonight, so we'll have a little bit of an email and think what the next step would be if we continue on the life path, which you kind of formed out, or if we go into something a little bit more specific. But we'll think about that for next week.
That
sounds
later.
About right for tonight.
That's for later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.